I think often there's this sort of bad taste in your mouth when you talk about traditional sales and just hopping on the phone and calling people and understanding what their needs are. And so first and foremost, you have to get over that fear. And then just who do you decide to call? So a couple things, social presence, online presence is incredible. Depending on the type of industry, whether if you're doing more field service, let's say gutter cleaning or painting, all that kind of stuff, you want to hit things like Facebook, Instagram, incredibly effective at building social profiles. If you run a quilting organization, really you're creating a very visual product. And so you have to appeal to a visual audience, capturing their attention and creating email lists. So once you have those email lists, those form fills, you can decide to nurture those leads through marketing automation tools where you can email them, engage them, invite them, send them promotional offers, that kind of stuff. But that really is the most effective way to generate leads quickly.
Welcome to It's Marketing's Fault, the podcast where we discuss how to do marketing the right way. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and I'm thrilled because I have with me today Nelson de Miranda. He is a Senior Director of Customer Success, Sales, and Professional Services at Method, which is the top lead-to-cash automation tool for QuickBooks users. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. How's everything going?
Man, we are good here. I'm excited because as I was prepping for this interview, both talking about QuickBooks, talking about the whole sales, that lead to cash process, I thought, man, I've got so many questions. So this is just total selfish of me. I just get to ask them of you. So I'm pumped.
No, yeah, I'm excited too. I had a conversation with my wife today. She runs a small painting business here in Toronto. And we're going through her problems. And I'm just like, man, this would be great material for the podcast. And this and
awesome.
That. So I'm excited to take you through her scenario. She uses QuickBooks and goes nuts about it. But then I support hundreds of businesses every day. So we'll go through that.
That's awesome. And that gives us some context. So I want to jump into that here in a second, but Let me jump first because as I look through Methods information and your content, there's this idea of lead to cash. So what is most misunderstood about the whole lead to cash process?
Yeah, where to start? I think for us, especially in the QuickBooks space, we're generally working with small to medium-sized businesses. Most of the times we find that we have an owner of a business who's wearing multiple hats, right? And hear this a lot, that owners are really excited and passionate about what they're doing, and that's why they opened up a business. They end up wearing all these hats, but as the business grows, tasks seem to distract them from the key focus, and they start to people to solve their lead generation problem. So they'll hire someone who is focused on social, on Facebook, trying to aggregate leads. And eventually what will happen is the owner is really the one who's in charge of the sales process. So he has to hop on, or he or she has to hop on the sales call, do an estimate, all that kind of stuff, do the payment collection because you don't necessarily trust someone to do that. So what we see as small businesses are growing and expanding is this layer of trust that kind of gets lost, but also just the more people that are involved in the sales cycle, the more that things start to fall down. And naturally, one of the first places to get siloed off is really that marketing and sales process. And so lead to cash, you have this almost a fracture between sales and marketing efforts where it's difficult to synchronize these activities because owners who are doing a lot of the back office stuff or maybe doing some of those services aren't able to keep up with the marketing throughput, or vice versa. You now have owners pushing and putting a lot of pressure on top of funnel initiatives that are driving new leads into your business, and they're not necessarily matching up the leads with the intentions of the business. And so these disjointed experiences is probably the most misunderstood problem, and how to bring it together is really complicated. And that's what we try and address is how do we create one story for every single lead and make sure that from beginning to end they finish successfully, which for the small business means a happy customer that eventually puts a review on a website, becomes that warm referral source that we know is incredibly effective at growing businesses and growing sort of the overall success of that business.
All right, folks, a quick breather here. In my time building my business, I've come to a profound realization. Certain tools can be a game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk about Leadfeeder. It's a tool that helps you cut through the data and turn those website visitors into solid leads. Leadfeeder shows you which companies are checking out your site, tracking their behavior, and integrates all this with your CRM. Result? Your secret weapon for targeted lead engagement and making it easier for your team to convert website traffic into sales. Head to leadfeeder.com for a free demo and get a free extended premium trial when you let the rep know that you found about Leadfeeder through the It's Marketing's Fault podcast. All right, back to the show. Now, I appreciate that. And that's fascinating that disconnect between sales and marketing and sort of that overall activity is where the biggest problems occur. I honestly think I've worked at enterprise level businesses and it's like the same problem there, right? It's like sales and marketing. It's real easy for them to get disjointed. You mentioned it's a complicated process of getting that sort of straightened out. What's the first step of that?
Yeah, it is a problem that exists at all levels. And before Method, I actually worked in a technical marketing capacity and still selling software. But that's where I really realized that there's always this deep disconnect. And the goal is like sitting down and having a clear alignment meeting, understanding what types of leads do we want? Are they focused? What problems is our business solving? And making sure that marketing has a really deep understanding of the solution you're offering and how you get to that point. Because what will often happen all levels is that customer or lead intentions, they'll come in, yes, I'm very interested in what you're doing here, but my budget is so, and really those pre-qualification questions aren't happening early enough. And that's really what leads to that separation or that fracture. And so making sure that everyone is aligned on what their ideal customer looks like. Often you'll hear buzzwords like IC, which means an ideal customer profile. I'm sure you've had that dozens of times on your podcast, but really just identifying what the ICP is and making sure everyone agrees that is the target customer we're going after.
All right, folks, a quick breather here. In my time building my business, I've come to a profound realization. Certain tools can be a game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk about Leadfeeder. It's a tool that helps you cut through the data and turn those website visitors into solid leads. Leadfeeder shows you which companies are checking out your site, tracking their behavior, and integrates all this with your CRM. Result? Your secret weapon for targeted lead engagement and making it easier for your team to convert website traffic into sales. Head to leadfeeder.com for a free demo and get a free extended premium trial when you let the rep know that you found about Leadfeeder through the It's Marketing's Fault podcast. All right, back to the show. No, I can see that being a challenge if everybody is not in alignment on what those customers are, what those customers look like. It can be all over the place. And I'm sure, especially early on in a business, founder, owner, they're just trying to get business in the door.
Right.
So they almost take anything, and I can see how that would just carry with them through the process.
Yeah. I've worked with so many owners who, I go back to a point I made on trust, but once you start bringing people into your business and you trust them to do, or you trust them to be engaged with customers, there's two types of owners. There's some that will really relinquish that control and trust that individual and work together. And then there's another type of owner that will often say, I did this so much better on my own. I was so successful at getting my own customers. And I think that's a very difficult mindset to break out of. Even in my personal experience with my wife's business, trying to just break her mold and trying to break her pattern of success so that she can get the exponential growth she wants, rather than tackling just the one and two customers that come through the door organically, is really the biggest challenge that I see every single day, regardless of size.
And that makes sense just because it seems like the short term, it seems like, oh, I can just handle this.
Yeah.
I can just deal with it. But that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And so I can believe I'm sure that's a training. I'm sure it's just like that repetition and encouraging, and you have to let it go for it to be successful.
Yeah, and naturally as humans we're risk adverse, right? If we go into some deep marketing tactics, let's say you want to purchase an ad on Facebook or you need to invest on someone to help you build a website. I think decisions like that, we're often scared because we're expecting a return on investment really quickly. This is going to change my business around. I have a website now. I'm spending $500 on ads this month. This is guaranteeing me more money. And I think there's that incremental learning and unfortunately a little bit of stumbling to figure out what works for you, what works for your business, your industry, and adapting to that effectively.
Yeah, that's the hard part is just getting that mindset, understanding I can hand it off to somebody else and it might not be quite as good,
Right.
maybe initially, as what I do. Maybe it's better. I don't know. But anyway, that's stuff I don't have to do. Oh my word, right? I don't have to mess with this stuff.
No.
But it's a tough thing to get your mind around.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And anytime you're faced with adversity, let's say revenue goes down or something changes in the business, I think it's generally those just falling back on what you used to do is the common trend. And so you end up losing out on some of the skills you've built or the lessons you've learned going through the exercise. And so sometimes falling back on old habits actually hinders the ability for the business to move forward. Naturally, you have to make those mistakes. And yeah, I invested $500 on Facebook ads, and I didn't get one lead from that. But when I advertised at my local church, I was able to generate a ton of business. And it's just learning from that and learning to pass that knowledge on to the next person or to someone you trust so they can continue to execute against that is really part of the lead to cash process. But really where the lead to cash process falls down is that knowledge transfer when more people are involved in the entire cycle.
And just bringing them in and getting them involved and ingrained in the knowledge and the culture and the process.
Exactly. You got it.
Man, that no, I agree. I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. So let me just jump into method. So tell us about method. What is method?
Yeah, method is a variety of things to a lot of people, but the surface, we are a no code platform. And what that means is essentially we're a platform that allows businesses to design custom apps that support their operations using integrations with key accounting platforms like QuickBooks to make sure that you have really one central place, one truth or one source of truth for all your data to make sure you're growing, you're capturing the information you need, and really enabling you to focus on profitability and solving problems for customers. At a layer deeper, we solve problems like scheduling, order management, collection, estimate approvals, and e-signatures. And so we're this sort of all-in-one platform that really enables your business to centralize a lot of the day-to-day operations and maximize the opportunities that you do have in the cycle for either new leads or existing returning customers.
Wow. Would you say one of the problems that you solve for your customers, is it efficiency? Is it just like centrality of information? How would you describe that?
Yeah. I think you put it well there with efficiency and productivity. Depending on the growth stage of your company, data is generally fragmented. And so you're going to have a bunch of really good data in your accounting So your QuickBooks file, up to date, good addresses, customer balances, who's your best customer, your worst customer, you're able to figure that out. But then your leads and your prospects, that might be on Facebook, that could be in your Google account, on your contacts. A lot of my customers still use Outlook contacts quite a bit and keep track of all their contacts there. And so because data is so fragmented, it's really difficult for anyone in the business to understand what stage is this customer at, and what stage is this lead at, what's their next step. This customer is to use an extreme case, is a delinquent, hasn't paid us in 6 months. How do we make sure that we do not engage with this person again? And how do we share that information? And with us in particular, because of our relationship with QuickBooks and accounting, it really enables the team on the small business side to understand who a good customer looks like, what a good customer looks like, what do they purchase, how often do they purchase, and really using those analytics to drive efficient behavior so we can automate repetitive tasks or make sure we're talking to the right people to drive our revenue growth as well.
It sounds like it's a very much an educational process for you with the customer and just helping them understand their own business, which they may not understand all the workflows because I get it. Like it's almost like everybody wears the same hats almost, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that what they do? They come to you, they're like, I don't understand what's going on with my business. Something's wrong. And I just need you to help me figure it out.
In some cases, there's a combination of both where we have people who they may have tried other applications and they find that even with those applications, they find that their data is still fragmented. They still find themselves going back to Excel documents or Google Sheets and not sharing information effectively because it doesn't connect to the source of truth. And I'm going to go back to the source of truth quite a bit. Really, who's paying you? And because that's what's really going to give you the best indication of growth. What does your ideal customer look like? The one who pays you on time and purchases frequently. I don't know if as a business you're often focused on that. You're more focused on how do we get more? I just want more. And when I have more, I'll figure out what the ideal looks like. But I think anyone listening today or to the podcast in the future knows that there is a certain group of customers that you wish you never had or you want to avoid or that just made things so difficult for you. And as a business owner and as a team, you may not go back and reflect on that enough without a cohesive system where you can go back and see, here's where things went wrong. Here's why things didn't go well. Here's why we needed to do a refund or we needed to go back to their home multiple times to address an issue. And yeah, we're really solving those problems and making sure that whoever picks up the phone, whoever answers that chat message, whoever responds to that website request, they have all of that information in one place so they can tackle that request effectively and know what that next step is.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I like that idea of one source of truth that we are working out of the same data pool. Is that where the connectivity to QuickBooks comes in? Do you work with them to identify where their one area of truth will be and then interconnect everything to that?
Yeah, and that's where most people come in from, is they'll have that great data source, but there's this fear of sharing financial data. And naturally, I think that's a valid fear. It's also, there's the other side of that is that it's incredibly powerful in the sense to enable people within your organization, at your job or at your business to know that. Like, how relieving is it for me as a business owner to know that anyone on my team could pick up the phone, answer a call, and collect on a payment without having to write it down on a piece of paper, entering it into the system and telling the customer real time it's been paid and sending them off a statement. And a lot of businesses, especially in their growth stages, let's say under 100 employees, struggle to share that and enable that. Go back to one of your previous questions. Do people come to us to consult? Hey, something's wrong with my business, or am I doing things the right way? I do think some people come in with that sense as well. As a society, we've adopted a ton of technology, and we're almost at a point where everyone is fatigued because there's so many pieces of software that do so many things, but nothing ever does everything. And as a small business owner, it's incredibly frustrating because you might be working with smaller margins. You may have just hired a new person. And making a software choice is generally the last thing on the list of all the operational costs. And yeah, we engage with users to better understand how their business is structured and identify where that area or where there are areas for repetitive tasks to be automated, or just identifying scenarios where their business could be doing better if they just open the door a little bit more to share information or share knowledge.
Do you think that knowledge sharing is like one of the biggest hindrances to small business growth, or what do you see as a couple of the majors there?
Yeah, sort of operating capital. That's one of the biggest hindrances for small businesses. They just can't spend freely, whereas a larger organization might be able to chance things, for lack of a better word. So I think that's a factor. Resistance to change is definitely one. A company I worked with recently, they had been doing a lot of their marketing manually. So they had hired a person who would just do a ton of emailing manually. They would go through their list, they would engage, create lists, and send emails, all that kind of stuff. And we had to sit down with the small business owner to, for lack of a better word, convince them, hey, marketing automation is important. Here are the tools that are available to you. And he was incredibly reluctant to make any of those changes just because it would cost more. Who's going to support it? Who's going to maintain it? Just going through those types of things and dealing with the reluctance of change. Yeah, combination of operational costs and change management is really the two biggest hindrances for small business.
No, I appreciate that. And that makes sense in terms of just some of the growing pains of what they run into. So that kind of leads me to, we talked about top of funnel, bottom of funnel. We talked about leads. We talked about marketing. We talked about some of that disconnect. But let me ask, just for small businesses, what are maybe a couple good ways for them to get leads? But I'm going to ask, I'll ask it excluding customer referrals, because customer referrals are great. If people will say, yes, go do business with them, that seems a whole lot easier. But like, what happens when they're just trying to get going, or they're needing to generate leads quicker? I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, hopping on the phone is not the worst thing in the world. I think often there's this sort of bad taste in your mouth when you talk about traditional sales and just hopping on the phone and calling people and understanding what their needs are. And so first and foremost, you have to get over that fear. And then just, who do you decide to call? So a couple things: social presence, online presence is incredible. Depending on the type of industry, whether if you're doing more field service, let's say gutter cleaning or painting, all that kind of stuff, you want to hit things like Facebook, Instagram, incredibly effective at building social profiles. If you run a quilting organization, really, it's a visual, you're creating a very visual product. And so you have to appeal to a visual audience, capturing their attention and creating email lists. So once you have those email lists, those form fills, you can decide to nurture those leads through marketing automation tools where you can email them, engage them, invite them, send them promotional offers, that kind of stuff. But that really is the most effective way to generate leads quickly. You could go out to local community centers, depending on the nature of your business. If you're growing a software business, it's a little bit different, where you're creating content, digital content like we're doing today, or you may be writing blog posts to just build up your brand awareness or do some thought leadership. But a lot of those efforts do take time. I think where small business kind of falls down, and I love going back to the topic of knowledge and learning. We're all smart. We're all really great at the micro crafts we're doing, and share enough of that. We don't share because we believe it takes too much effort. It's not going to be perfect the first time around, or who's going to who's going to watch the type of stuff? Who's going to read the content I'm producing? And so it's pretty interesting because my sister, who's also a small business owner, she runs a quilting business, and she really struggled with that in her early years where she had to create a ton of visual content. It's, believe it or not, very competitive, which surprised me. I didn't think quilting was a hot topic, for lack of a better word. And so once she got into the string of things, she knew, I'm just going to generate content. Someone will listen, someone will appreciate it. I'll get feedback. I can iterate on that and develop my customer base from that. So I think the fear of going online is still exists amongst us today, and we have to be comfortable with that and figuring out ways to automate it too, especially in the age of AI. We hear a lot about ChatGPT or the Google equivalent. I think it's called Bard. But there are a ton of tools that help facilitate constructing your thoughts and that enable you to create more of that content you'll enjoy creating, and that will help your business as a byproduct. Hopefully that
Yeah,
answered the
and
question. Sorry.
it did, and that was great because, and I think that you like so much in there, that idea of you just have to move past the fear or move through it. You have to remember that you have something to offer, and you just have to get out there. It's something that I've seen both in my own struggles and talking with other people, is this idea of you just have to keep doing it, right? It's not like one piece of content is going to solve all your problems. It's there's no perfect content. There's just more, right?
No, for sure. It's fun. I as I go and I work with small businesses, I'm trying to think of another one that was pretty interesting. They create or manufacture medical cabinets. And so you go into a doctor's office. I don't know if they still exist, but you generally have these big cabinets with file folders, or they're used in medical applications. And the company was pretty large. They were generating quite a bit of revenue, definitely in the six figures of annual revenue. They were struggling with the concept of, like, how do we make medical cabinets exciting? How do we bring something that's so boring, that stores files or products in there, and make it exciting? And eventually, over time, as they started creating content, they realized, hey, maybe we could jazz it up and make it colorful, make it more enlightening. Not everything needs to be dull beige or dark brown of the 80s. There are ways to personalize even these drab experiences. Really, when they identified that pattern, it was amazing. People were engaging. I thought cabinets were so boring. Now you're making cabinets exciting. And it sounds cheesy and corny, but it worked. It was effective. It got them eyeballs on their product, it got them eyeballs on their manufacturing, and really skyrocketed their engagement because now you had doctors' offices, dentists' offices looking for ways to personalize and make an interesting work environment for themselves, so it wasn't so drab. It wasn't just fluorescent lighting and light colors of minty green. So it was exciting to go through that process with the client, and exciting to see just how their customer base engaged as they started working on their content and started working on their social profiles as well.
I love that because, like you say, if you think of medical cabinets, that's not on the top three of what you think of as cutting edge, thrilling, engaging businesses. But you can take what is often considered something boring and really make it engaging.
Yeah, yeah. Just a personal preference here, just because I have close ties to field services and our business supports field services. But I really love those Instagram profiles where guys are just out there power washing things. I don't know if you subscribe to stuff. It's just guy cleaning the sidewalk or erasing graffiti, and it's just I find it so exciting to look at their machinery. They introduced me to their new power washer. Here's the DeWalt 4000 PSI. This thing could cut your toe off. And then they start just power washing the wall, and fun to watch that it almost makes me interested. Maybe I should kick off a power washing business. And then I'm like, I got too many things on the go right now. Let's just stick to the Instagram videos. But that kind of content is incredibly engaging. Some of those people have created massive businesses just based off of engaging content where they're just showcasing what they do 8 hours a day.
I can believe that the fear factors there too, right? Just in trying to get out there, oh, I'm going to look dumb. Oh, I'm going to look foolish. How do you get them past that? Because I know it's with the content creation as well. And actually, that kind of, let me ask the fear question in conjunction with something else, because you had mentioned getting on social, email lists, things of that nature is I'll call it cold calling, but we'll just call it cold contacting. Is that dead?
Again, it's all industry based, but I like the example of quilting, but there's another example. I'm trying to think. They were creating products for your pets. And so I was working with this business that creates products for their pets. And so again, it's very visual. You're selling a product, you're not selling a service, but you're demonstrating your product. Maybe it's a dog wearing a bandana as a handkerchief, and those are really popular. So cold calling in a traditional sense is certainly not dead, but I think the challenge is not many people like using their phones for anymore, which is strange. But engagements on their social profiles and just talking to people over things like Instagram comments or Facebook comments and engaging your audience so that they understand who you are, what's your brand, what are your values goes a long way. That person might not turn into a buyer, but they might turn into that we say is very effective and that will generate more leads for your business because of your brand and your values. We have a lot of people who will piggyback on eco-friendly, and there's a certain group of customers out there that just loves eco-friendly. You put green on anything, you've got 10 customers. But then there's also the equivalent of if you put anything on a pet or an animal, they're just like, oh, that's so cute, I just need to buy it too. And so calling in a traditional sense isn't dead, but I think effectively using your social platforms to have cold messages or tailoring messages to a specific audience or engaging with people about your content will drive a lot of interest in what you do as a business, but also drive other more effective, we'll call them effective conversion activities, which is they'll provide you with an email. They might sign up for a newsletter on your website where you'll be engaging with them on a more regular basis and maybe more long form format where you're writing a blog post or you're summarizing your day at a customer site. And so here's the start of the project, the end of the project. And that nurturing will eventually lead to those customers as well. So hopefully that answers the question. So cold calling is
It
not dead.
does. Okay, and that's really good to know. And I like how you discussed it within the context even of content creation, where the goal ultimately is obviously you just want inbound leads. Obviously, if you can get inbound leads, that's wonderful. But it's all together. It's reaching out. It's engaging with people. It's engaging with businesses. It's having real or text conversations to build relationships and ultimately to move them forward.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories, the recent customer who he builds, I'm trying to remember what they're called, but cellars, wine cellars. So he used to build custom wine cellars for businesses, but also for homes in the US. And he contacted Method and he just wanted to talk about how can we help him with his wine cellar business. And he had launched a side project as well to distribute cigars. And just going through that and like, how is this going to help my business? And so what he would do is build custom humidors. In addition to wine cellars, he was building custom humidors. He had one business essentially feeding another. There's some people who like to smoke. People who like to smoke generally like to drink. And so you're marrying these two activities together. And over time, he had actually developed a tertiary business where he was doing custom prop development for film sets. And because he was a woodworker, he was able to just connect the dots. And partnering, he gave me a really good example of just you can also partner with local businesses to share leads as well as an opportunity, right? If you have someone who cleans gutters and washes windows, likely when he services someone, they're going to ask him for, hey, do you do power washing of sidewalks or removal of graffiti? Or do you do interlocking stone? For you as a service provider, you're like, wow, they're widely different things. Like power washing and interlocking stone are two different things, but also building relationships within your business information group, if you have one, or a local business group, definitely helps so you guys can share amongst each other and figure out, are there opportunities to work together on potential leads? Where are there opportunities that we can share or engage with each other when services are needed? And that's definitely effective in my wife's scenario in her painting business, where you can do painting, but everyone hates painting. And they like to pass off leads whenever there's an opportunity to pass that off. And she'll do the same whenever the tile guys, and they're like, hey, can you do our tiles for us? Yeah, I'll tell you a guy. Here's a guy. And so you just create that sharing of leads as a key takeaway as well.
I like it, that idea of that complementary businesses working together to take care of the customer
Yeah,
in whatever way they need. And that kind of leads me into this next question, which is more on customer success. So we think of customer success. How does customer success impact small businesses, positive, negative, whatever, compared to larger businesses? Does one group need to just do customer success better than the other, or is it equal for both?
definitely equal for both. I think on the larger side of things, the scale is just larger. But I think brand power, your brand recognition is so much even more important. But I think it's definitely equal. Every customer, you have to make sure that positive experiences are leading into repeat business, are leading into referrals, are leading into advocacy for your brand. I had a really great experience with Sowens. They installed a bunch of electrical outlets in my kitchen. It was a great experience. Let's get that going. Or on the software side, review sites. Reviews, regardless of the size of the organization, have the ability to damage the reputation, set you a step back, and are really detrimental to all sizes of businesses. And so, how you react to a review and how you tackle a review is also part of overall customer success. Could you take a negative experience and turn it into a positive one? And if you couldn't, what learnings are there so that doesn't happen again? Or are there opportunities for you to improve so that maybe that wasn't your ideal customer? And when they came in and tried your software, when they tried your services, it didn't really match up with what they were looking for as a solution. Customer success as a whole, and figuring out a way to measure that is important and can have a massive impact to your business and businesses of all sizes if you're not looking at it.
Measuring the customer success, I think that's fascinating. For small businesses, is there like one metric of customer success they should be looking towards? What's the lowest hanging fruit of customer success, so to speak, for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll have to think about that one a bit. There's no one measure. That's certainly the case. Customers come in different shapes and sizes, and each one has their vision. I think at the small business level, there's two things that I really focus on, and that is, depending on the types of services or products you offer, what does a repeat customer look like? And really, that's a way to measure it. Do you have someone who's purchasing weekly, monthly, annually? Are they purchasing a new product line as soon as that comes out? Are they purchasing your services on a regular cadence? Let's say you're a landscaping company. Are they renewing for you on a quarterly contract? Are they purchasing you year after year? Can you count on that customer to be there next year? I think that's one really effective measure. And really, that's just a categorization of, was this recurring or one time? And how can we identify that this customer will be a recurring customer and this one will be a one time, and prioritize their success and measure what makes them successful. On the other side of things, for things that are more transactional, I always love the idea of review based. All of us are, every single day, every time we make a purchase, we're looking at reviews, we're checking out review sites, and really, what is the brand's behavior? Do we always expect to see 5-star reviews? Probably not, because that gives us an indication of maybe some bad things are happening. But the alternative is also, if there are some negative reviews, what was the business's reaction to that? And how did they handle that? And really, that's going to have an impact on customer success as a whole, and really a really good measurement of how effective you were, as a business, and how happy that customer was.
Definitely. I love both of those. Those are very practical ways that any business can really take a begin to get the pulse of their customer success. It's not a massive database, it's not some weird algorithm. It's just looking and saying, repeat customers, excellent, which is what we want ideally. And what's that look like, as well as what our reviews look like, and can we engage when they're not good?
Yeah.
I think those are very doable
Yeah.
for most companies.
And there's always that, we go back to the fear of social, and a lot of people are scared, or one of the learnings early on is being defensive isn't always the right way. And so just being reflective, understanding, and just being open to knowing, hey, maybe something did go wrong. What do you look like a vulnerable perspective, and how do you make yourself vulnerable? One review won't destroy your business, but I think the way you react to adversity as a business owner or as a business really helps a buyer understand what type of customer you are, what you value at your business, and whether or not they'd be willing to engage with you for services or products or software engagements, depending on what their needs are. And customers are intelligent. You can't just throw a page on there and say, hey, buy this now. They want to see what adversity looks like. They know they have unique challenges, and they want to see how your business will behave or react to when something out of the norm happens.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate you going into that. And just as we're beginning to wrap up, one last question, one takeaway you would like to leave the listeners with.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked a lot here, Eric, so I'll try and keep it short. Inefficiency and resistance to change is really what hurts most SMBs, whether it's marketing activities or just jumping into a new channel where we're learning more, experimenting. I go back to a point I made at the top of the call, which is just fear of experimentation and being burnt once or twice and then curling up into a ball and going into a defensive mechanism. That's not always the best approach. It's just, if you run into those situations, how do you learn? How do you address those small problems? And then identifying ways to automate those processes so that your whole business feels less scary when things start to go wrong, and you don't have to wear so many hats and have to constantly be in firefighting mode or crisis aversion mode, and slowly evolving your business piece by piece versus making these radical changes that feels like Napoleon conquering France. It should be more along the lines of maybe your cell phone usage and how that's grown over the years. I know for me, my mom used to have an old flip phone, and to watch her use an iPhone now is amazing because she got the full customer cycle of cell phones, but are generally way more successful than a revolution. None of us wants to be exiled to an island somewhere between Africa and South America. For those of you who don't know, Napoleon was exiled into an island somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. I don't know exactly where, but and those are the types of problems we solve at Method. And so I'll leave you with that key takeaway.
I love it, but it's true. It's not about a major. It's not usually about a major overhaul. It's just like baby steps of progress, and just moving it forward is key. So Nelson, if listeners want to know more about you, they want to know more about Method, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, we keep it pretty simple. So it's just method.me/podcast. We have a workflow checklist there that will help listeners review sort of their current processes, specifically from lead to cash, and highlight opportunities where there may be maybe gaps in automation or just gaps in business operations in general. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So method.me slash
Yep,
podcast.
you got me.
Awesome. So if you're listening, I'm going to drop that in the show notes. Definitely check it out and begin this process of moving past some fear, automating where it really makes sense. Nelson, this has been really informative for me. I've learned a ton and really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And hopefully, if there are any Napoleon fans out there, there's no witch hunt for me, okay? Sorry, I went to university for geography, so I love bringing up a little bit of history in all my talks. So
I love history too. I was tracking right with you. I was like, yeah, this is good. I'm right with you. That's awesome. Thanks for joining me.